All right, good afternoon. I will start off with a statement on the terrorist attacks that occurred in Baghdad. The Secretary General condemns in the strongest terms the recent terrorist attacks in Baghdad, which have caused many multiple casualties among civilians who were observing the holy month of Ramadan. The Secretary General expresses his deepest sympathies to the families of the victims and wishes a speedy recovery to those injured. He reiterates that the United Nations will continue to stand by the government and the people of Iraq in their efforts to fight terrorism and hopes the perpetrators of this outrage will be swiftly apprehended and prosecuted. And this afternoon, as we've told you, the Secretary General will be delivering an address on climate action, mobilizing the world at NYU Stern School of Business. In his address, he will describe both the increasing risks from climate change and the compelling opportunities provided by climate action to create jobs, generate economic growth, and build the foundations for a safer and more stable world. He will also lay out the 5-point action plan to mobilize the world behind climate action. The address will be followed by a conversation with students, business leaders, and academics who will be in attendance. Those of you who cannot attend, who have not yet RSVP'd, the address will be webcast through the UN Web TV and on the United Nations YouTube channel. And the Human Rights Office and the UN Mission in the Central African Republic today launched a mapping report documenting mass killings and other serious human rights violations during the multiple conflicts in the country between 2003 and 2015. The report states that many of the violations may amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity, as it sets out a strategy to fight pervasive impunity in the country. The report, which was mandated by the Security Council, documents in detail 620 incidents, including horrific accounts of entire villages being burned to the ground in reprisal attacks, multiple accounts of gang rape of women and girls as young as 5, and serious violence against people on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, or perceived supports for armed groups, among other serious violations. While the report recognizes the challenging security situation in the Central African Republic, it recommends that some steps be taken immediately to initiate transitional justice processes. The head of the UN mission, Parfait Onanga Nyanga, said that successive conflicts have spawned multiple peace processes, but as long as impunity reigns, this terrible trajectory may continue. In documenting the violations and abuses of the past, we hope to galvanize national and international efforts to protect and bring justice to the victims of these crimes, he added. And that report is online. And earlier today, the Security Council was meeting on Yemen and was being briefed in open meetings by Ismail ul Sheikh Ahmed, the Secretary General's Special Envoy on Yemen. He said that tragically the violence continues on numerous fronts, deepening the suffering of the Yemeni people. The envoy said we are not close to a comprehensive agreement, adding that reluctance is of the key parties to embrace the concessions needed for peace or even discuss them remains extremely troubling. Yemenis, he stressed, are paying a price for their needless delay. So far, he said, we've managed to avert a military action on Al-Hodeidah. The envoy said that he made clear to the parties during his recent meetings in Yemen that they must reach a compromise on the situation in Al-Hodeidah in order to prevent such a horrific scenario. We do expect Mr. Ismail to speak to you at the stakeout probably around 1 o'clock or so, but we'll let you know. And also speaking to the council was the Emergency Relief Coordinator, Stephen O'Brien, who said the people of Yemen are being subjected to deprivation, disease, and death as the world watches. He stressed that this is not an unforeseen or coincidental result of forces beyond our control, but rather is a direct consequence of actions of the parties and supporters of the conflict. It is also, sadly, a result of inaction, whether due to inability or indifference by the international community. And we are deeply concerned by the devastating impact caused by the cyclone MORA on Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. The United Nations stands ready to scale up its support to the government-led responses efforts in both countries, and the Secretary General will be reaching out to the permanent representatives of both those countries. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the cyclone has brought flooding and landslides to various provinces and affected tens of thousands of people in both countries. In Sri Lanka, the government estimates that 194 people have died, 99 people are missing, and more than 80,000 have been displaced. The government, with the support of the UN, NGOs, and local partners, and organizations, as well as member states, is responding to the flooding and is providing emergency supplies of tents and clean water. And the International Organization for Migration today deployed 3 assessment teams to 4 of the districts hit hardest by the devastating flood and the mudslides in Sri Lanka. The cyclone made landfall in Bangladesh yesterday, where some 2.8 million people may have been affected, and more than 500 shelters have been opened. And the humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, Edward Cologne, said today that Nigeria is facing a protection and food security crisis of global proportions in the northeast of the country. More than 1.8 million people have been forced to flee their homes in the 6 northeastern states due to violent Boko Haram insurgency and military counterinsurgency operations. More than 4.5 million people are food insecure in Borno, Adama, and Yobe states, and this number may rise to 5.2 million during the upcoming lean season. Humanitarian partners have scaled up assistance, and the delivery of food aid has increased 700% from October 2016. However, Mr. Cologne stressed that while the humanitarian response has increased substantially, we may not have turned the corner yet, and if the funding situation is not sustained, the situation can easily relapse in a famine situation. The humanitarian response plan for Nigeria is only 28% funded. And our colleagues at UNHCR said that they've received worrying reports over the weekend of armed criminals approaching migrants and refugee boats in the central Mediterranean, wounding and stealing from the passengers. Several refugees and migrants who landed on the Italian island of Lampedusa this weekend had gunshot wounds. Many of them reported their belongings had been stolen by Libyan militias. Many survivors also reported having witnessed friends being fired or killed while in Libya. UNHCR stresses that saving lives remains a top priority and reiterates its call for a credible alternative so these dangerous crossings for people in need of international protection. More than 1,722 people have died or gone missing trying to cross the Mediterranean this year alone. The number of people rescued has so far surpassed 60,000. And UNHCR also tells us it is appealing for urgent and safe passage and admissions of a group of Syrian refugees stranded by the dire circumstances on the Algerian-Moroccan border. The 41 Syrian refugees have been stranded on the remote Algeria-Morocco border since April 17th of this year. Both Algeria and Morocco consider the group not to be in their respective territory. The group includes children, women, and babies, including at least one pregnant woman who is reportedly in need of a cesarean section. UNHCR calls on both governments to take instant and constructive steps to uphold international humanitarian imperatives and evacuate the refugees. And our peacekeeping colleagues tell us that the 3rd phase of training of engineering for peacekeeping for a number of future African peacekeepers under the Triangular Partnership Project started on May 29th in Kenya. The project, launched by the UN Department of Field Support with the support of Japan, Switzerland, and Kenya, is designed to train and equip African military engineers to be deployed to peacekeeping missions. The 3rd phase, 36 Japanese instructors will train up to 60 Tanzanian trainees, plus some trainees from other African troop contributing countries. A Swiss-led training of trainers course for 10 trainees, as well as a Brazilian-led engineering project management course for up to 20 trainees drawn from different African troop contributing countries will also be conducted. All current and future African troop contributing countries will eventually be eligible to begin this project, and to benefit from this project, and after participating in the training, the military engineers are expected to deploy peacekeeping missions where they will fill critical gaps in current UN engineering capabilities. And tomorrow is World No Tobacco Day, and our colleagues of the World Health Organization highlight how tobacco threatens the development of nations worldwide. Action to stamp out tobacco use can help countries to prevent millions of people falling ill and dying from tobacco-related disease and combat poverty. But this year, WHO is also presenting a first-ever report on large-scale environmental degradation caused by tobacco. And I wanted to flag a couple things for tomorrow. ECOSOC will hold a special meeting on innovation for infrastructure development and promoting sustainable industrialization to find ways to accelerate the implementation of Goal 9 of the SDGs in Africa. More information on ECOSOC's website. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., the UN General Assembly will meet to elect the president of the 72nd session of the General Assembly. The Secretary General will also be attending that meeting and will be delivering remarks. Miroslav Lajčák, the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of Slovakia, has been nominated for the position of president. Following the election, the president-elect will hold a brief media stakeout outside the GA Hall at about 11:15. More information is gettable from Dan Thomas in the PGA's office. And at 10:30, there will be a press briefing here sponsored by the UN Non-Governmental Liaison Service with Save the Children on key factors ending childhood around the world, and how to keep childhood intact. Speakers will include Carolyn Miles, the President and CEO of Save the Children, Dr. Jill Biden, the Chair of the Board of Trustees of Save the Children, and Marta Santos Pais, the Special Representative of Secretary General on Violence Against Children. And today we say a very hearty thank you to our friends in St. Lucia, who bring us up to 100 and... Very good. 2. It's also my cue to take questions from you if you have any. Well, then please.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Can you please verify and give me the details of why or what happened exactly for the UN to withdraw its support for a women's center in the West Bank? Okay, if you have the details of what happened exactly, who called the United Nations, and what was the response of the United Nations, and why, if you can explain it. And I have a second question, if you want.
Go ahead, I'll take it.
The second question, in his briefing, Mr. Mladinov, he spoke about the 10 years of Gaza under Hamas, and the miseries that Gaza had been going through. But he failed to mention that Gaza also had been subject to 3 wars. He did not mention the 3 wars, but he mentioned the miseries caused by which is personally I couldn't agree more with him about the kind of rule that Hamas brought to Gaza. But again, there are 3 wars that had been launched, devastating wars, completely, and it was not mentioned. Thank you.
Mr. Mladinov, I think, was very clear in what he said. The fact that he did not mention the totality of what has befallen on the residents of Gaza for the last decades doesn't mean he didn't. It doesn't take away from the historical reality. I think on the community center in Burqa, I think my understanding is that UN Women had supported it along with some bilateral donors. Once it became clear, once it became known to the UN that the center was named after someone who had killed dozens of children and civilians, the UN disassociated itself with the project, and we'll make sure that such incidents do not occur in the future. And I think we stand clearly against the glorification of terrorism. Matthew.
I noticed that the Secretary General was meeting finally with Mr. Michel Kafando today, and I wanted to ask, there's over the weekend and increasingly today reports of this, the ruling party militia in Burundi training children to denounce Tutsis as lice and essentially call for their murder. And I wanted to know, so do you have does either Mr. Guterres or Mr. Kafando have a response to this?
I think we stand clearly against hate speech. This is the first occasion for Mr. Kafando to meet with the Secretary General in his new role. He's also having a whole series of other meetings at headquarters. And if we have more to share, we will.
And I want to ask you on Cameroon. You'd said that in May, Mr. Lancenifal would be going to the country. I don't know if that's true. I know that he's going in early June. And I just wanted to make sure that you were referring to this meeting of regional security that seems to be almost entirely about Boko Haram and CAR. Is there anything, can you say what his agenda is there and if he's going to raise the Anglophone issue?
I will check. Kyodo.
Thank you, Stéphane. I would like to ask you about comfort women issues. As you know, there was discrepancy between Japanese Prime Minister Abe and Secretary General Guterres on what they said on the agreement between ROK and Japan on comfort women issues. Why did it happen? And secondly, I'd like to clarify Secretary General's position on the agreement. On December 2015, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon clearly welcomed the agreement. Is Mr. Guterres is the same position now? Thank you.
I think we made the Secretary General Guterres' position clear in the readout that we issued. He said the Secretary General agreed that this is the matter of the agreement is to be solved by an agreement between Japan and the Republic of Korea. The Secretary General did not pronounce himself on the content of a specific agreement. He's not pronouncing himself on the content of any agreement, but on the principle that it's up to the two countries to define the nature and content of the solution on this issue. As for the discrepancies, that's, I can only speak for the Secretary General of the United Nations and who he is today, and that's Antonio Guterres. I cannot speak, and I don't speak for the interlocutors that the Secretary General meets. I think it's up to each side to issue a readout of what their principles said.
What is his position now on agreement?
I think I don't know what other words to use. I think the Secretary General says that it's a matter for the two countries to resolve it in agreement. He agrees on the principle that it's up to the two countries to define the nature and the content of the solution for this issue.
Is he in the same position to Ban Ki-moon, Mr. Ban Ki-moon?
My limited capacity only allows me to speak on one Secretary General at a time. The record for the previous 10 years is transparent and can be looked at. I speak for Secretary General Guterres. I think I've used up my words to describe his position. Yeah, in the back. Yeah, you. Go ahead.
My name is Hiramoto from Nippon Television. I'd like to also ask you about the discussion between SG and Mr. Prime Minister Abe. And according to the press statement on the May 28th from UN, SG said to Mr. Prime Minister, regarding about the special reporters, regarding the report of special reporters, the Secretary General told the Prime Minister that special reporters are expert and that are independent and report directly to the Human Rights Council. My question is this statement, is this everything that the SG told to Prime Minister about special reporters?
That's the gist and what the Secretary General told him. I mean, we talk often about special rapporteurs here. Special rapporteurs have a critical role to play in the human rights architecture of the UN system, but they do not report to the Secretary General of the United Nations. He does not appoint them. He does not set their mandates. Their mandates are set by the Human Rights Council. They are appointed by the Human Rights Council, and they report to the Human Rights Council, and they are independent experts. That's just a fact. Go ahead.
According to the brief made by Japanese government, they said SG told that the reporters' view do not necessarily reflect the opinion of United Nations. Is this true?
I think I just answered your question. They are independent rapporteurs who have specific mandates, and they report to the Human Rights Council. Evelyn.
Thank you, Steph. I wonder if in the future, when you list the countries who have paid their dues, you could give a percentage of, well, what percentage is that?
Well, I mean, we can try to do that. These are the assessed contributions, which are a matter of a matter of public record. I can tell you if I have how much St. Lucia paid, but I don't have that.
No,
but anyway,
not
it's all a matter of public record. But we can try to
Yeah,
get that
but
as
what
well.
percentage is that of?
Right, but I don't have the assessment scale in front of me. but
Okay,
that's-
perhaps you can at one
yes.
point add it all up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Stefano.
Thank you very much. About again the G7 in Sicily this last weekend. The Secretary General spoke. He spoke about Africa, about the importance of investment in youth and so on. But in Sicily, he's also was a place where actually the migrants' situation is just, you can see. I don't think from Taormina, because it's a very luxury place, but just a few miles away, you see people dying. So my question is, Guterres, Secretary General, was there. The 7 countries, what was his impression? What did they decide? Are they aware of what's happening? Are their decisions in line with what should happen? And if you want, let's say, if it was a college professor after this meeting, what grade he will give to this meeting?
I don't think. Listen, the
On
secretary.
this specific issue.
The Secretary General was in Taormina at the invitation of the G7 to attend the outreach session, which was focused on Africa, and we put out his remarks. I think what is clear is that the response to the refugee crisis, the response to the migrant crisis, has been wholly inadequate from the international community. I mean, we see it with the number of people who continue to die in the Mediterranean. And that is why the Secretary General of the UN has put such a great effort on this continuing discussion and compact on the mass movements of people, because it is about not only dealing with the end result, which is these people, these human beings arriving on these shores having suffered tremendously, but it's also about dealing with the causes, whether it is conflict, whether it's economic, whether it's climate change, transit countries, how transit countries are to help, and the overall support the international community gives to refugees and migrants. Matthew, and then Abdelhamid.
I wanted to ask, you read out this mapping report on the Central African Republic, and I wanted to ask you about a section of it where it seemed to say, the English version didn't come up, but the French, also I'll ask you in French. La politique de tolérance zéro des Nations Unies en ce qui concerne l'exploitation et atteinte sexuelle n'a pas atteint son but. So even in this report by the UN itself, admittedly not their major focus, they're saying that the current zero-tolerance policy hasn't worked, and separately there's a section about Sangaris, and although they say that the troops were exonerated by France, they say that the Office of the High Commissioner has a database, and they state as a fact that money was paid for sex with minors. So what's the response of the Secretary General to this report?
I think maybe we don't completely agree on the translation. N'a pas atteint son but, to me, means it hasn't reach its ultimate goal, which is the wiping out of SCA. I think no one is claiming victory in any way. I think this report is a tremendously important report in terms of helping the Special Court, in terms of helping the Central African authorities start the long process of prosecuting and finding those responsible for crimes against humanity. I mean, and possible war crimes, and they get outlines over 620 cases. It's a very important exercise in terms of a message to the victims and in terms of a message to the perpetrators that what they have done has not been forgotten. All of the cases that are mentioned in the report, including those committed by international forces and UN forces, have been publicly known already. So it has not unearthed new cases. Where information is available, there is follow-up with member states on the allegations of violations. the member states concerned have been briefed, and as we've said, we're continuing to monitor the member states' responses to those allegations.
I guess just, and thanks, I won't get into the translation. Now I've found in the English section says, as a fact, not as a footnote of exoneration, that soldiers of the European Union military mission, the French Sangaris Force, and MINUSCA military contingents from different nationalities engaged in sexual exploitation of children through sexual intercourse in exchange for cash payments. Some girls became pregnant. Footnote, Office of High Commissioner Human Rights case database. But there's no, it's not a live link. And I guess what I'm wondering is, it seems when you read it that the UN knows that these cases are in fact true.
Well, we've very often been the first ones to announce these cases. I mean,
So
no one,
okay,
and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights is responsible for tracking crimes committed by international forces, non-UN forces. The report is part of a broader issue of crimes that have gone unpunished in the Central African Republic. So I think we welcome this report, and the report brings to light and it puts, I think, puts together in a very powerful package the suffering of the people of Central African
Republic. Just very
specific,
and thanks a lot, because I guess what I was saying is that since in the same paragraph it says France exonerated all of Force Sangaris, and then it says that the UN knows, as a fact, French Sangaris Force engaged in intercourse for cash payments with minors for money.
Right.
What does the UN say? Are they what do they say about the French
I think
legal
what is
process
clear
led to
is
no
that those people
conviction?
who may have committed those crimes need to face justice. Abdelhamid.
As a follow-up, Stéphane, my question was also about how did the UN come to this decision? Was it by itself, or there's a phone call came from the Israeli
I think it is
Foreign
clear.
Ministry?
It is clear to anyone that we cannot stand for the glorification of terror. All right.
But during,
that's
yeah,
my answer to your question.
I'm asking about the
Well, I think
mechanism.
people found out that this center had been named after the specific
So
person.
it wasn't based on a demand by Israeli Foreign Ministry.
It is clear that we cannot stand for the glorification of terror.
Can I ask, I actually have one other question, but there's something related to that. Just because here in New York City, I hadn't planned to ask this, but there's a controversy about just this issue. Some alleging that the upcoming Puerto Rican Day Parade honoring Oscar Lopez Rivera is a glorification of terrorism. There's different. So I'm just wondering, since this is the host city, what does he have any view on that? If it's true that he never
first of all,
accepts it?
Abdelhamid was referring to a case which involved the UN directly, in terms that UN women supported the case. We have no involvement in the organization of the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and I don't know enough about the case to offer a comment.
And I wanted to ask you this. I'd asked you last week about Christina Gayat speaking in the GA, and you said it was in the context of being UNIS chair. On, I guess, the 25th in Barcelona, she spoke as the Undersecretary General and Special Advisor of the Secretary General. She's listed in that capacity. Has this post been given to her?
I believe that is a post she holds until the 30th of June. Thank you. Good day.